Since 1945, Weatherby's been building the finest firearms and ammunition in the world. And today, we're proud to continue that legacy from our facility in Sheridan, Wyoming. This is On Our Mark, the Weatherby Podcast.
Welcome back to On Our Mark, the Weatherby Podcast. I am your host today, Tyler, and I am joined by a great crew, a pretty fun crew. We've been running around show season and thought it would be good to get back together. So I'm going to let each of you introduce yourself. Koby, who are you?
Koby Owens. I am the content producer here, so a lot of what you see visually comes from me, films and reels, all the fun stuff, and Deej helps me out with a lot of that too.
Cool. And then the dynamic duo.
A and B, here we are.
A and B.
Adam and Brenda Weatherby. We just do all the things.
How's the show season been treating you guys? You guys just got off a lengthy...
We just did Sheep Show in Reno, straight to SHOT Show in Vegas, straight to SCI in Nashville, and it's good to be back in Wyoming. Great times, actually, out there with a lot of industry folks and intermingle with a lot of customers. It was just a phenomenal time, actually. But getting back here in Wyoming, good fresh air out of convention center feels really good.
Yeah, the fresh air is like the thing that I miss the most. But I think my favorite thing was the consumer face-to-face.
Yeah.
People being excited about seeing new products for the first time that we came out with. And then we had a lot of people be like, I just bought that one, or I bought. So it's cool to get to interact that face-to-face. Again, marketing, we do a lot of like on social on this. So it's nice to get out and talk to people in person. So
Agreed.
Yep, it's good industry family, that's for sure.
So today's podcast is going to be a little different than what we've done before. Adam, maybe just kind of give the premise of what we're going to talk about today.
I don't know. It's probably not going to be my favorite podcast. We're going to kind of talk through a couple hunts that didn't go as planned. It's fun to come back in here like when Brenda and I got back from the Yukon and be like, man, I shot a 10-and-a-half-year-old ram, and I shot my first wolf, and Brenda shot the #1 caribou in the Yukon that year, and we just come back and tell stories and make films, and everybody goes, gosh, aren't they great? But the reality is that, like most hunters, we're often not successful. We miss, we can injure things, we can come back skunked, we can make bad decisions. And so today is a story of some blunders, some things gone wrong, with a couple redeeming things here and there. And I think just a podcast sharing that as hunters, we get out in the field and every day it's like going to school. And some days we get schooled pretty hard. And today's podcast is about getting schooled. So keep the comments easy when we're honest about our mistakes today, all right? So
Yeah, that will happen. I mean, we do a lot of DIY hunt type style, and with that, you might have the biggest plan in your head of how things are going to go, and then when you get there, it just totally changes. Right. So, right. Maybe let's start with Wyoming mule deer. That one, this story is pretty awesome. You guys were after a big buck, but maybe start off with kind of the premise of that hunt, because this one's kind of a special deer.
Yeah. It actually started in the summer. I was out walking and hiking, and I think I was actually archery hunting antelope at the time, maybe in August. I can't remember, though. That's what I was doing. I was archery hunting antelope, and I stumbled across a big buck, 4x4 with an extra on each side, a little 5x5, and in velvet, and so it always looks 3 times as massive. And I was love at first sight until it wasn't later. So that moment I came back, I took a bunch of pictures, bumped it at like 50 yards, and it stood there broadside before archery season. And I came back and showed Brenda a bunch of pictures, and at that point the obsession began. Would you say, Brenda, how would you describe it?
Obsession?
All consumed?
Oh, gosh. I was like, oh, my gosh, if this is what archery hunters are like, then I'm not sure about this. It was like every couple days I had the new update on the deer. And then, have you seen the picture of this? And I'm like, yes, I've seen it. You've showed me like 1,200 times. And this went on for like 3 weeks.
Well, I don't know. I guess if it was during archery, then it only been, I think it was 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It seemed like eternity, but 2 weeks.
It felt like forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like forever. But I was trying to be very supportive. So I would get behind the glass and try spotting this deer. I actually did probably more times than you. I got really good. I told him I got these new binos, and I'm like, I think I like I got so much better at spotting through my big spotting scope, which I'm usually not that great at, and binos, because I kept finding this deer. And he's like, I'm looking for him, and then I'd come back around and find him again and be like, I just found him. And he's like, you couldn't have found him. I'm like, I did. There he is. So it was really fun. We kept kind of bantering back and forth with each other. Half of me having fun with it and half of me like totally sick of a 2-week hunt or 3-week hunt. It felt like 3-week hunt. I don't know.
It was fun. We really got to know this deer and its pattern and behavior. Hung out with different bucks and had switched to going hanging out with different younger bucks. And just kind of really got attached, which people maybe do to a white-tailed deer more, but to a mule deer.
Smart deer.
I remember there was one time it was raining, and I went where I thought it might pattern and come over, and I can't remember. I think I probably was hunting archery at the time that day, and it was pouring rain, and I sat up there, and he came down, but he was on some private non-huntable area, and he was probably for 15 to 20 minutes sat there as if he knew I was up on this hill behind this cedar tree, and he would do this thing with his neck and like go up like this, like really high, and then like come down and like look in a different way each time. It was the weirdest thing, and like it was just pouring rain, and you know when you look through the binos and it's pouring rain, it just looked, it was like a magical moment like you'd want to capture as an artist.
Oh, for sure.
On there. And we just had a lot of, he never came across that fence line that day, but there were just a lot of different ways that we interacted in different ways over both the weeks of scouting as well as once the archery hunt started. Which that was September 1st when it started.
I remember when you came back from that rainy day, because you're just sopping wet, and I'm like, well, did you see him? And he was like, oh my gosh, we had a moment. And I was like, oh no, you have to be kidding me.
So you're building this and you're building this. Have you ever had an animal like that before, where it was like you built such a lack of a better term, a relationship with this deer?
Yeah. It was cool where there was like a respect for him that formed, you know? And then, so on opening day, to summarize opening day, I had 4 or 5 blown stalks on this deer on opening day. I actually mapped it later where all these blown stalks were. And the why, and each time, like one time a smaller buck came in, I thought the big one was going to come, and I'm there, and then the smaller one came in and blew me. And then, you know, it was just something each time, and Brenda was out there and helping me relocate him, and he'd go bed in some other area, and then, you know, you look, and you're looking on Onyx, and by the time you get to the draw, it's the wrong draw, and he's, you know, like I came in on him once, and he's just staring at me over on the right, and I thought he was straight ahead. Like, just classic, like, just kind of rookie mistakes. It was 4 or 5 blown stalks on September 1st all day.
Yeah.
It was insane because he'd just go rebed somewhere and then we'd go find him.
Was there something like...
just, you know, I'm a rifle hunter.
That's what I was about to get to. Is there something refreshing about almost learning a new skill where you've gotten very proficient with like your setup, your shooting, knowing wind calls and things? This is like a total different set of skills. Do you think you may have got obsessed with that part of it too?
Yeah. Yeah, it was the whole thing, and just you can see why archery hunters, you know, spend a lot of time in the field, because it's like it's these almost moments again and again and again.
So
you know?
so many things need to go right for it to happen. You know, like there's such a vast majority of factors when you're getting in that close to something. Sure. And back to the early season, kind of falling in love with the deer. You know, that's kind of an early archery season thing when they are patternable, right, up in the high country, and I've got to film those hunts before, and you do build that rapport with that buck, and you have to wait for the right winds and all these different things, and you spend a lot of time behind the glass that time of year, and so this was a little bit different than like a mountain peak one, but it has those same factors, right, and we're primarily rifle hunters, and being able to do this archery will bring you into these new little nuggets of knowledge that you find in that pursuit, right? Like, oh, okay, when I'm getting in this close, I really got to be more quiet on a mule deer, where elk, you can make some noise. So,
and I was taking boots off, and there was one time it was like a boondoggle, and I had like, I left a pack one place, and I left my boots another place, and
The
like
spotting scope another.
I lost my spotting scope for like 2 weeks on the mountain, and used a different one.
And then I
was just
kept
a
trying to
mess.
find all his stuff. So I was like, we're not going to have any stuff left if you just keep leaving it everywhere. And I'm like, this is the guy when he's rifle hunting, he never takes his pack off. Like, doesn't matter. You take it with you. And I'm like, what happened to that motto?
You got to sneak in, and then I'd be running around in my socks, stepping on cactus, and like, I was just a dork.
He was a wreck.
So basically, by Sunday was opening day, I remember, and it there was 1 or 2 days like didn't come in to work, and I went out and sat on him for 3 hours in 95 degrees, and he was bedded in the middle of sage with nowhere to stalk. Like, I mean, I was on him 10 times easily
all week
over those 5 days.
And I'd get like a text.
But always out of range.
I'd get a text that would be like, Brenda, I need you to come help me get this deer. I'm going to get him this time. And I'm like, I've got a whole day planned. And I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. I
completely lost focus on everything.
I remember like talking and working with Luke too, and Luke, we'd get like deer updates. So it's like the deer report for the day. It's like, well, Adam has to leave this afternoon because the deer report was very good this morning. So
the whole schedule of the office had to change, I guess.
It was pretty funny to be sitting in my desk, like making an edit on a film, and I just get like a text of a picture like 110 yards away.
Well, when you're sitting there for hours waiting, you know. So it was actually then on Thursday, I actually had a morning meeting, and then I thought I knew where he was going to bed that day, and I left after a morning meeting, and sure enough, I found him. So I had him for several days, weeks at this point, including before season started, after all these blown stalks, and basically I got to just within range of where he was at, and I could see his velvet antlers, but not him. And I waited in the 90-degree heat beginning of September here in Wyoming for like 2 hours, probably texting you guys, waiting for him to get up. And the moment finally came, and he got up, and the shot didn't feel awesome, but the obsession over the weeks, it was like the best shot that I'd had. A little bit of sticks blocking him, a little bit downhill, maybe slightly quartering away. But I felt it was doable. And so I took a shot, and I hit him high above his shoulder. And then that started another long process that went for weeks. Mm-hmm. So there's epic blunder number one. And I can go back on it, and I knew everything I did wrong, and whatever, I can go replay that. But the bottom line is it was high. And left to right was perfect, but it was high. And so it went above his vitals and above that shoulder. And Luke came out actually that afternoon, helped me get on him. I actually got within 27 yards of him, and he bedded. We were still not knowing if he was going to die at that point. He got up at one point and looked at me through the tree, so I was waiting for him to get up, and I was trying to kind of sneak around, but it was 27 yards. I wasn't naked, but I was, everything, like pack was off, everything was gone, and I was there, and I remember he looked, and I just had his head, like, in the midst of just thick cedars, and he looked at me like one of the million times that he did, and I couldn't get a shot off at any sort of clean area. And in retrospect, I laid up all night thinking, well, maybe I could have threaded the needle here. You know how you do.
Yeah.
Did all that. So that night ended. Even saw the knock, the lighted knock, like that night, and knew, that he was around. And so then it was days and days and days. And the next day, Brenda and I sat on him under that one cedar, and he was on some private, and we sat for 6-7 hours in the heat under this cedar, and we knew exactly where he was bedded. and we knew where he'd have to go to water sooner or later. So we blew that one too.
When
the
you
days went on.
when you first released that
Yes.
that first arrow,
Yes.
did you feel like it was a good shot, or did you know you hit him high? Like, was there a moment of like when you release, there's kind of like, there's this build up, and then you release?
It's funny.
Was
It was
there-
exactly. So I shot an antelope at the same distance. I can't. My fall's blurry. Weeks
Yeah.
later, and I was really nervous about it because of that other one. I went back after that day and really practiced and everything. And I felt kind of the same on that antelope, and I hard shot him.
Yeah.
But I think because of where he was and because of the sticks, I think it mentally did something. I mentally did something, if that makes sense. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it was.
So what was the day that, because I can't remember.
Yeah.
But what was the day when I said, Adam, we need to talk?
I didn't know we were going to go there. It's all kind of a blur. But there was a point at which I kept stalking this injured animal, and it'd go on some other, it'd go on other properties, come back. Raleigh, our national sales manager, was out one time, and I got on him, and I thought he was behind one sagebrush. It was a different one, and like it was just one thing, and so. I was maybe foregoing some responsibilities in various areas of my life, and so there was a point.
I don't think we had dinner together for like a week.
I think it was a point, like we have like Sunday evening church, and like I kind of left pretty early because I thought I knew where he might be, and then I just rushed out and went home and just didn't. We usually talk, what's the dinner plans, whatever, and I think I just left church, got on my gear, and just headed for the mountains immediately, and I think when I got back that night, we had a talk.
Something needs changed here.
But there was just that persistence, though. You were door knocking, calling people, trying to make sure that you were doing this deer justice, though. Like,
I
for
did,
sure.
and we had permission to get on some places, and if I would have had a better tool, like a rifle, because I would get just outside a distance, like 100 to 150 yards, like 6 million times. So that was the hard part, right?
Mm-hmm.
What had happened, though, is he recovered. And so where right away it was different. But then he basically, he actually vanished.
For a few days,
So-
he vanished.
Well, no, we lost him when I went to Alaska.
Oh, yeah, that was like
So
10 days.
vanished.
Yeah.
10
He
days?
vanished for days.
10 days, I think.
And there was no buzzards, no anything. And we didn't know where he ended up going. And so I actually went up to Alaska, and we hunted Koby, and came back, and I had a friend and his son come out from California for their first antelope hunt, and took them antelope hunting. And so I go up to glass one morning, and I'm glassing, and there's my buck grazing without a limp,
oh, wow.
with another buck. And I was like, it had been 2 to 3 weeks. So there's a large gap between opening archery and the opening deer unit for rifle. Here would be 6 weeks in that unit. And so at that point, archery had actually closed, and it was in the gap in between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are we telling him about during that talk how I told you that you needed to be done, and then you went and got a different deer? Did we talk about that?
Oh, yeah.
Because then that makes the
at
rest
that
of the story
point-
make sense.
Well, at that point, what had happened was, he'd been gone. The deer had been gone. It was a gap. We knew that rifle season was coming. And at that point, I knew that I needed to hang up the idea of this deer. And that Brenda, basically I just said, I felt like and this sounds weird, I felt like I failed on that deer in so many different ways. And so I just thought at that point that if the buck ever showed back up, that Brenda could put her rifle tag on that buck if it showed back up during rifle season. Mm-hmm. And so Koby and I went out to the western part of the state, and there's another podcast I think we did on that one.
Yeah, we did do a
on that?
podcast on that.
Yeah, and shot a good buck in a totally different part of the state, and thought kind of had kissed this buck goodbye, but didn't know if it turned back up. Then it was after that, went to Alaska. Came back, was antelope hunting with this friend. His son ended up getting his first antelope buck. It was super cool. And so that's when I just immediately went, he's here, he's alive, he's healthy. I just felt injuring it. I just didn't settle right. And then he vanished and all these things. And so the fact that he was out there, now he wasn't the fattest deer out there at that point, but the fact that he was out there actually grazing and doing that, I knew that he'd recovered. It's amazing, those animals, what they can do to recover. And so at that point, I think I texted Brenda and said, I found your buck. So it wasn't my buck anymore.
My buck? Wait, what are you talking about?
It was then Brenda's buck that she'd helped me hunt for days on days on days. Sat in the sun and everything for this buck.
When you first saw him, was there kind of like a relief or an excitement, more of like just, you know how there's that burden. I mean, at the end of the day, we're taking an animal's life, and it's like, don't want to take that lightly, but I could imagine there being this almost like relief.
Yeah, and there's other times people just go on a hunt, they injure an animal, and they come home and it's all done. This one didn't settle right. It was that respect I felt like I had for the animal, and I just felt like I failed, and those different things. And so the fact that it was there, because I knew that if it, I just kind of knew at that point Brenda was going to finish what I started, and I said this will be a really cool end to that story.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so I saw it that day, which was it was still before rifle season by a week probably at that point.
So by that time, now we're scouting again to try to keep dibs on him.
Find out the new patterns.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, we're finally done looking for him, and now we got to start looking for him again so that we could be ready. So we did a few different days. We kind of started seeing his new pattern
before rifle season. So this is the gap.
Yes, the gap. Yeah. So we figured out some of his patterns, and we had a few ideas of what he might do on opening day. The crazy thing is, opening day, Adam could only he was leaving at like 10 a.m. or something for some show. I
had to go to Kansas City for a wholesale, an NSGW wholesale show. Yeah. And had meetings with big accounts.
Yeah, so we had this like plan, but how it went down is like we didn't know, based on his patterns, like when he was actually going to bed. And so I couldn't have Adam right next to me, because if he had to get up and leave, he would totally blow it. So
we were both scouting.
Yeah.
We got up opening morning and went to different areas. And the bottom line is we found the buck, and Brenda positioned herself, but he was on private property.
Yes.
But figured he was going to come across the fence to bed.
We hoped that he would come across, and this was one of Adam's blown stalks, was in this same bush. So I was positioned.
Twice.
I was positioned under a tree, and he was with about three different ones, three different other little bucks,
Younger bucks.
And so we saw, them come across. One buck jumps over the fence and beds. The next buck jumps over the fence and beds. So he's the last buck. He jumps over the fence. Literally, it's like he slides into
the trees,
into bed. Like later he was like, how did you not get him right when he crossed the fence? And I'm like, there was no way. Like there was no possible way. So he slid into bed. I could see him through my binos, no shot whatsoever, just barely see his rack.
And we also knew, like mule deer often, they'll bed, and these bucks have been doing it. They'll do that morning bed for an hour or so. Sun will switch, and they'll go get in their
first bed, second bed deal.
Correct.
Yeah,
we knew that this was first bed. We'd patterned these deer long enough to know that deer wasn't going to be there for 8 hours, most likely. So, Go ahead. And he was hopping fences, so he was healthy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he looked healthy.
Yeah.
The little bucks were very close to me. I don't know how. I don't know how they didn't know that I was there, but the little bucks got up and did their second bed, and then just like clockwork, this buck got up.
After you're there an hour at 100 yards from 4 mule deer.
It was rough. I was like I wasn't archery hunting, but I was as still as I've ever been on a hunt. And so I shot him, made a good shot. But the funny thing is usually Adam's like right next to me, and he's telling me how my shot is. I'm not really great at calling my own shots. So I just put more bullets in him than I probably needed to.
So at this point, I could see, but I wasn't next to her, but I could see through the spotting scope what was taking place. And I'm like, why is she still shooting? Like, that deer is going to die. And she also knew what an adventure this had been. And the last thing she wanted was it to get away.
This thing
and
is not getting up.
It's also close to a fence line of privates for a number of reasons. I think that was good and logical, but it definitely didn't go very far.
You were using your guide, right? Your new
Backcountry guide.
Backcountry
60
guide.
RPM. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. It just was flawless. It was great. The feeling of, Adam, he hightails it as soon as he knows that the deer's dead. It took him like 10 minutes to get there. And then, the feeling of, when I saw him come over the hill and I was just like, we got him. It was so great. It was a really, really fun adventure. And it really was good for me because, like I said, I always shoot an antelope by myself, but I usually don't shoot like a great animal by myself, right? And so to do the whole thing and it be so close, and it was a really big learning experience for me. And even to like make the calls, like typically I'm like, okay, Adam, is now the time. Like he's usually directing.
Well, and they're intermingling too, so the opportunity to shoot the wrong buck when they're in the trees. Mm-hmm. And that was honestly, it was a little fear that was going through my head, was like, oh no, she shoots one of those dinky ones. I'd be so mad. Because, they cross and they look. I mean, we've all heard those stories. That was a fear of mine.
So typically, like, I don't have to think like that much. I just have to follow instructions.
Yeah, you execute the shot. You execute.
Yeah, and I'm always so trusting, and I don't I always think of our hunts as a joint effort anyway, and he does everything he can to make me more successful. Probably most of my success is only because he's like micromanaging it so that it's the best possible situation. But this hunt, like I had to make all the calls by myself, and even throughout it, I was like, nope, that's not him. Nope, that's him. Like I'm counting everything. And I was so calculated, by watching how he does that naturally. So it was a really, really cool
confidence booster. For
yeah.
you.
It really was.
You kind of flipped the switch, huh? And you just like went into that mode like naturally because you've been around it so much probably.
Yeah.
But it just needed that flip the switch on and you're
like,
boom.
Because when you aren't relying, like you can rely on someone else, well then you don't have to rely on your own skill or your own confidence. But in that moment, I was like, we're going to kill this deer. So it was really, really awesome. Really fun.
I made it over there for literally 5 minutes. We called DJ up. He came out and got photos, and I headed to the airport. So Brenda cut up the whole deer by herself as well.
Well, that part's easy.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It was great.
Yeah.
Fun time. And then we decided, because we're always like, okay, where are we going to put this animal? We really felt like this was truly the only animal that it was both of our deers. Like it really, really was. And we had this little spot in our bedroom over our little fireplace. And I'm like, I think that deer needs to go like right there, So the deer that was Adam's and then ended up mine and was both of ours. So.
Yeah. Like usual, Brenda's cleaning up for me. So putting meat in the freezer.
It's fun. Good times.
That is fun. There's just something about like you were talking about failure and things like that actually kind of just keep you like driving. Like success is great, right? Those are the fun times. But something about failing just makes me want to go one more step. Like it's hard to let go sometimes, but it's cool. There's this kind of full circle where then there's kind of a bookend on the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of times it doesn't end up like that. Your wife doesn't go shoot it with a rifle, 5 weeks later.
Yeah, you have to wait till next year a lot of times, right? And then that's the driving factor. That brings you back because you're so much hungrier.
Or somebody else goes and shoot it, the bull elk, that big Colorado bull elk I shot that, we know the guy who missed it with an arrow in September in Colorado, hunted it for 30 days, missed it, knew he had a draw, huge 10-point draw, knew he'd point draw, and he'd never go down there and be able to get it again. And then I showed up opening day and went, that's a really nice bull, and then just shot it.
Or that'll happen.
Which that kind of leads into the next part of this podcast. If we wanted to kind of continue on that, we had another one that wasn't super successful, but it was successful in other ways. You guys did a pretty darn tough hunt in Colorado last year too. 2 years ago, you killed a big bull opening day, and then the exact opposite type of hunt. You guys really put in some work on last year's hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. So we went down to Colorado late season. So that whole story we were saying was fall here, this last fall. And later in November, we had third rifle season tags for Colorado. Brenda had an elk tag, and I had a mule deer buck tag. And based off the success of the last year, we're like, man, this is going to be awesome. Let's go make a film. Koby, let's go do this. And so we took, it's a 7-day season, and we said, let's go take the whole season and go down there. And we're going to go hunt the high country from like 9 to 13,000 feet in mid-November. And
right after a blizzard of 2+ feet of snow, like got there the day after.
Yeah.
Actually, we left late because we
pushed back a day because of it.
It was crazy, and that's how this whole thing started. And if I were to just, I'll cut to the chase on this hunt. I've never, I don't think, done a hunt and had it been so unlucky in one cumulative hunt. Like, it just, everything that kind of could go wrong just kind of did. And we thought we were going to kill something like a million times, and then wind would change. Another hunter would come in. Just all the things kept happening to us on this Colorado trip that we had.
Yeah, I would call it like the hardest and most grind hunt that I've done. That's not like you're staying in the backcountry, right? Like actually camping out. Like this is I was behind the camera, but man.
We were going to go stay in the backcountry, and then when it snowed 2 feet, Brenda got us an Airbnb, which was super nice.
I was like, third rifle season after. No, I don't think so.
I think that Brenda's cooking in that Airbnb kept us going through the season. Like, I don't think that if we had done the teepee tent thing in the backcountry, we'd have made it the whole time. But
No way.
the home cooking, good food, and warm
awesome.
House was much
But
needed.
it was long days that we put in on the mountain. And, we passed some smaller things. It's not like we couldn't have filled our freezer. We have a lot of opportunities to hunt, and we knew with these tags there'd be some opportunities in more mature animals, and there just wasn't anything. It was really more mature and older class animals. It wasn't just that we were horn hunting. It's that we wanted good mature stuff. And throughout the week, it was just crazy. With the elk, they all, because of the snow, they went and got in their winter herds at the bottom. So we'd be way up in the mountains, and you could glass down to the fields miles away and then see a herd of 200. And we're like way up in the wilderness. But we knew, and there were tracks, and there was sign, and we knew there was some. And we ran into them. We chased big herds of 150 elk up in the timber. We had bugling elk.
Yeah.
Bugling elk. Like a lot of bugling elk, middle of November.
It's cool. I like bugling elk in the snow.
We had all these kind of opportunities, it was super fun, a lot of close encounters, and like never was a trigger pulled. Fingers were on triggers multiple times. Like if we'd have maybe lightened the poundage another half pound, we might have almost squeezed it before something happened or something walked in front. Like we almost had some opportunities. There was one day we sat up in the snow on this huge herd way up in the mountains for hours and hours, freezing cold.
North face in the timber. Oh,
So cold.
Just so cold.
every layer we owned was on.
Puffy pants on the outside of rain pants. I mean, we did everything.
And that day was actually the only time that Brenda had a shot for 3 to 5 seconds, probably.
Yeah.
In the sticks, and Koby was getting the camera on it. We were kind of just positioning, and we didn't know that'd probably be the only 3 to 5 seconds all week. And
it was such a small opening of trees. It had
to
we
be
were
a
kind of
perfect shot.
hesitating.
There was no follow-up shot that would happen. It was.
We wouldn't
it was
even
pretty rough.
known
It wasn't
where
a great
he went.
shot.
No.
I'm just saying it was the only quote shot
Yeah.
that we had at a mature bull.
It was a hole in the timber on our side, hole in the timber on the other side, and I'm trying to line the Swaro up to film through both those openings and get at the same level while the elk are moving.
It's rough.
There's just so many moving parts that Adam's like, okay, there it is. I'm like, not on it. and then it was
Yeah.
gone. And it's
Yeah.
like, no.
But then what's crazy is some other hunters ended up bumping them up in there. We're public land. And, everywhere we went, we were post holing like thick snow. So, like, our legs were burning hard, that week. And so we went and tracked it down later, even that day. We go track down the herd, and we were closing in on them. And hear a gunshot. So we're like, oh. So we already that morning early, too, we tried to get them when they were out. Just missed them, and they'd gone to bed.
Yep.
Then we sat on them for probably 4 hours.
At
Then there was
least.
that almost shot. Then we go track them down, and there was a gunshot. And then we're like, so it was like strike 3 of that day on the same herd. Like we had like 5 strikes a day. And then we're like, oh, bummer. And then we hear them, and the herd is running through the timber at us.
Stampede.
So it was going to be the 4th opportunity. Koby has his zoom lens. What is that thing? The
I
big
have
thing.
so I have the Swaro 95 millimeter, and it's 30 to
He's
70
just
zoom.
looking at like fur.
I have it zoomed all the way out as far as possible, and I can fit one elk in frame, maybe 1.5. They were 150 yards max, 100 to 150 yards in that range, just coming through this.
And there's a
gap.
bunch of raghorns, and we see the biggest bull, the one that Brenda had maybe almost shot earlier in that
Yeah.
day for a split second, but all sorts of elk, no clean
just
shot.
layers.
Whatsoever.
Layers.
But then they turn, they were going a perpendicular to us. They turn and start coming at us. They get under 150 yards. There's a herd of 150. And this is after 3 of those things all day, right? We didn't get them in the morning. There's thinking, I'm like, certainly we're going to kill an elk right now.
Totally.
And then all of a sudden, those other hunters who had shot earlier start shouting and rumbling around in the trees looking for their bull that they'd shot and scare them away.
That's super tough.
And then they go up the face we were just sitting on.
Yes, then they go. Yes, that's exactly what they did. They went to where we were sitting for 5 hours, and then we go try to chase them, and they're bugling and everything. Like that. There's an example of one day. But
That was every day almost. Like
so we do have to tell the coolest story day, though.
oh, yeah.
The best day of the hunt.
oh yes.
So fun.
Oh
So,
man.
The best day of the hunt was, so we have a buddy that we developed a friendship with, Chris, and we'd been talking to him all week, and he goes, hey, there's an elk I've seen that's like at like
13.
12,500 or 13,000 feet. There's a bull elk. We're like, what are you talking about?
On the literal top of a
I mean,
mountain.
at 10,000 feet, there's 2 foot of snow. And he's like, yep, been watching them every day. You guys been running around out here after these? He's like, he's eating, it's blown off. It's so blown up there that there's grass actually up there because it's just on the peak. You know that the winds are just blowing. And he'd just bed out there in the open all day at the top of this peak.
Just soaking
For a
in the
week
sun.
straight, he'd been doing that.
Yeah. So he goes, let's just go kill him.
He tells me, he goes, Brenda, 100%. We go up there, we're going to kill that elk.
He did say that.
He did say it.
And I'm
'Cause
like,
he's like,
100%?
we'll be able to. We studied Onyx. We knew all these things. And we're like, we can get within a few hundred yards of where he spends every day. He's like, yep, was up there all day. Yesterday. Let's just go get him. So I go, where are we going to go to get him? So we're planning it out on Onyx and figuring it all out. And it's going to be straight up.
What was
What
the
was
How
it?
many?
percent
Was it
range?
25 to, or I think it was over 3,000 vertical gain.
In 2 miles or something.
Yeah.
Insane. We're just going to scale like a mountain in the snow and then just kill this elk and just pack him out. So we're like, all right, let's go get it done. At first, there was going to be a worse way. We got a way that added about a half mile to a mile, but it was going to be overall grade. What did I say the night before? Average grade was like 48%.
Yeah, the first route was
I
like
wish I did.
vertical, and it was just going to be brutal.
So
Yeah.
we go, let's go do it. So Chris comes down there and meets us there.
He's just amped.
He's
Yes.
like, dude, this is going to be so epic. We're like, let's go.
But before we left the parking lot, what happened? You spotted a bull,
I drive up,
a different bull.
and from the road at the bottom, which was snow, you couldn't even see the road. Yeah, I spot a 6-point bull.
on the south facing
And we'd
slope.
been seeing rags. All I've been seeing is rags. This is in a totally different area, not by any big herds. But he went into bed. So what we said is, hey, if we get busted on this, we'll come back here and try to find this bull and shoot him tonight. certainly between all these options, we will kill elk today. 100%.
100% is a pretty high percentage too.
That's what we were
That's
working
what Chris
with.
said. 100%.
So you're right. So we leave that bull because he went into bed for the day.
Yep.
What did it take us? 3 hours?
Yeah.
4, maybe 3.5.
3.5. Right on.
Three and a
right on
half, post holing, straight uphill.
2 miles, 3.5 hours and 2 miles.
Packs,
Yikes.
gun.
that. Yeah, I mean, we got
I don't know.
full day's worth of food,
It was good.
which is a lot for me.
It was awesome. It was beautiful. It was awesome. We get to the top, and the winds were blowing
That's some
like
of the most
gusting
40?
gusting
50?
over 50.
over 50.
Could barely stand up.
You could. There were times where you thought you'd get blown off the top.
Put it this way, I was covering my eyes and just holding the camera and like, it's going to video something. Like I couldn't see
So
it.
the other days it hadn't been windy. This day it was. So guess what? The bull wasn't there.
I could kind of see the foreshadowing.
So we go rummage around the tops for a couple hours, and just the bull had peeled off because it's probably just uncomfortably windy for him as well.
Yeah.
So we said, well, cool. Let's go march back down. And maybe if we don't see anything on the way down, we'll just go shoot that bull Adam saw in the morning. So we came down the whole hill. We get to the bottom.
Now I have to say though, the whole time doing all of that,
It was
like
fun.
we are all three like having the time of
It was actually
Yeah.
the highlight of the week.
Yeah, for
By
sure.
like
far.
I was like, that was so awesome. Like I am like not negative at all. Like we're all like super pumped.
To be
Even-
almost at 13,000
It was so
feet
cool.
That's the highest in elevation I've
in,
ever been.
in
Yeah.
mid-November, like hunting an elk. Like, I don't know. Is that how high, or was it almost 12,000? I can't. No,
No, it was
No,
it
it
was
was-
over it was over
12,500. It was over
12,000.
12,500.
Yeah. It was
But
awesome.
We just kept saying this is the best day ever. We did think to go do this and actually pack an elk off like would have been next level awesome. But just the experience and going up there and the views and just it was just an incredible experience just to go do it. It was. So we were on a high when we came down.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
we're like,
Oh.
that was fun.
Yeah.
We were a little bummed that there wasn't an elk there, but it was the highlight of your week.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Totally.
I think all ours.
Oh, same. Yeah.
Totally. It was
The low was that night when we came back down, saw the elk very briefly at the bottom. There ends up being multiple bulls. We go move in, get in an epic spot. Wind was great, everything. We wait. We could only probably see a small percentage of the face because, like, we're up on the face looking across these kind of, like, we
Bunch
could
of
maybe
finger
see,
ridges coming down.
so we could
this
maybe
face.
see 30% of the area we wanted. So they could be out grazing, and there was no way to get in position to see. It was a genius spot if you're a bull elk not wanting to get shot.
Yeah, yeah.
And at that point, we'd known there were two, a good 5 and a good 6. And so we sat, and the sun went down, and we knew they were out there somewhere. And it was probably, shooting light is 30 minutes after sunset.
Yeah, I bet we have about 10 minutes left.
I think it was like
4.
6.
Was it
yeah,
4?
It was like 24
Okay.
minutes after sunset.
Yeah.
We kind of let our guard down because
We-
we're like,
We're like, look, when you waste 25 minutes
Yeah.
after you haven't seen him in hours.
All
And
of a
then,
sudden.
how far away was that bull staring at us?
130?
130?
100.
130 yards, there's
Yeah.
a bull staring at us through the trees, and they got us, and they saw us. And then where Koby was and where we were, we're like 5 feet apart.
Not even. We're
He's looking at a different
Right
bull.
next to each other.
Then we got in a big fight because he's like, no, he's looking right. I'm like, that bull is looking left, Koby.
and I'm
I'm
going,
like, I got 2 of them.
And he goes, that's a rag. I'm like, that's a giant bull. What are you talking about?
I'm
We were
like,
looking
no,
at two
it's
different
definitely
ones.
a rag.
But I couldn't see the one he saw. He couldn't see the one. And Brenda, the one with the tag's like, what's going on? Right?
well, it was so just
So dark.
so dark. Like, it's like that fine line of you have to know exactly what you're looking for in order to see it. And yeah, it just didn't.
And
it
so-
didn't
There was
happen.
no shot presented by
No.
either group
No.
of elk anyway.
No.
but
No, you
like,
could have shot
yeah.
him in the face,
Face,
maybe
that's
through the
about
trees.
it.
Yeah.
With no light left. So, like, there ended up being 3 or 4 bulls there.
There were 4. Yeah.
And it was like 4 minutes left, and they got us, so we just blew that. So then the next morning, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go shoot a buck.
Yeah.
So
Because
you
this
guys,
is last day, right?
So you go drop me off.
yeah.
It's going to be the last day at this point.
yeah.
Yeah. This is good.
No, because we hiked Wednesdays. We had a whole nother day where we went there, a whole nother time.
Oh, we
were there
did.
3 times. We hunted that spot 3 times.
We did. We had a day in between that we went back.
Okay.
They went back.
We went back the last day, so we all went back together.
Yes.
And then Brenda and I went back the last day. And you went to your look
I
for a
went
buck.
to a spot to look for a buck, saw a bunch of little dinky young ones.
We
And
got
then
back on him.
You guys saw the bull. By the time you got in shooting position, he never showed himself again. So, like, we went after those bulls 3 times.
And then
The giant herds a bunch of times. I mean, it makes it. This whole podcast, this is the worst podcast ever. Because it just, and then last day happened, and it's the middle of the day, and I'm like, let's go still hunt deer, because at this point we hunted. You guys hunted that bull elk in the morning. We knew where we were gonna go at night. Where did we spend the last night? I can't remember.
we went back, didn't we?
Oh, we sat there at that. Yep, we sat there at that same spot again.
Yeah.
So we go out still hunting.
Middle afternoon.
Yep. Bump 2, which is really hard to go still hunt mule deer. I mean, it's just really hard in the trees.
We're 200 yards from the truck.
And we bump a 4x4. He wasn't phenomenal, but
He was the most
We were kinda
mature
getting
shooter and the
desperate.
best deer we saw.
best deer all trip.
He just
yeah.
goes running in front of us at 80 miles an hour, well, that was a nice buck.
Yeah.
So we go track him for an hour. Super fun, actually.
Yeah.
Because it's in the snow.
Snow, yeah.
Snow's
So-
kind of melting a little bit at that point.
Yeah.
It just in this particular spot, kind of south facing, more winter ground type, right? And so we're having to decipher the tracks, which I love.
It was super fun. We spent an hour or 2. I then find another buck that was 70, 80, 90 yards.
Hey, yeah, 70, right?
Bet
It was close.
We used to record them a week after. There's been too many things that have
Yeah.
happened in the last few months. And I just see half of his head and his antlers on one side, and I start to get down in position. I think this could be a shooter. And while I'm fidgeting around, he gets up and darts. I mean, it was I barely hit. You guys never saw him.
No, I never.
And they were right next to
yeah.
you. And it was when you see them through the thick. So that was middle of the day. We go track him for a while. It was crazy how many almost dead things were out there.
Yeah,
Right?
the trip of almost.
So the last night we go sit back on that same hill where we'd gone a few times at the bottom of the huge hill.
Yeah. I spotted some sheep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
10 miles away from where we were
Well,
sitting.
yeah.
Spotted some
I have a
wild sheep.
tendency to glass stuff 10 miles away.
And bottom line is we hunted 7 full days
Dark to dark.
every day, dark to dark. We didn't waste any time. We were in the mountains. Had a blast. It came home with empty Yeti coolers.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was that's it. There was no end of the story thing. We just, I mean, like you said, it was there were so many times where you can have 2, 3, 4 times bad luck, but then it'll turn midweek. It just never turned. We're oh, well, last night it was here. Tonight, the animal's standing there. Last night, it wasn't windy. Tonight, it is. So every just thing that could happen just kept happening over and over every day. It was insane. And we battled some moments of discouragement.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
we got stuck in the truck one day for 3 hours.
Yeah.
That was fun. And had
Adam was
tire
mad.
chains that were the wrong size. It was just
Yeah,
one of
not-
those trips, you know. It was so you probably listen to a lot of On Our Mark podcasts where at the end it's oh my gosh, what an incredible story. No redemption.
Nope.
But
But you could have quit halfway through. I mean, a lot of people, coming from the Midwest, there's a lot of people who take their 7 days of vacation and go hunt. And then on day 4, when 3 things have gone wrong, they don't go back out. So it's you just got to keep looking for the next opportunity.
the last light too of the last day. Do you remember how cold it was?
Oh my gosh.
It was blowing, and we all couldn't feel a digit on our body.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, I just had it in my mind at that point. For a while, I'm it's going to be last night redemption. This is going to be great. And then in my head, I'm we suck so bad right now. There's no way on earth we're going to kill anything. And
Let
we
alone
sat there,
see
and it was so freezing and miserable. And I have never wanted to pull out before a second before that, 30 minutes after. And I looked at my watch. It was going backwards. I just wanted it to be over so bad. You remember how miserable that night was?
I was rocking back and forth. I was cold.
Just miserable cold. And we waited it out. And there's Brenda over there just smiling at the very end of it all. And we're hiking off. And she goes, wasn't that a great week? Wasn't that an incredible experience? Typical Brenda and Koby and I are like, that stupid Colorado.
Walking through that scree field down the last night, just like, what a way to end it, right? Just like, oh, can't even find a good route down.
Yeah. So, but guess what? We're going to go hunting hard again next year.
Yeah.
And the next time we tag something, because that was our last hunt of the year, right? Outside of bird hunting and other things, that like the next animal we tag, we'll feel like we earned it. And that's like, it's that pain. It's the lack of success that leaves you wanting more. If every single time you went out and had a perfect hunt, to be honest, I wouldn't hunt as much.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't be as fun.
Yeah.
But when you go through a grind like we did that week, and the next time, we go hunt with elk and mule deer tags in public land and tag something, like I had the year before on opening day, killed a 350-inch bull. Like that was the year before, and 12 months later, that was the next year. And what's cool is like we don't know what this fall's gonna hold, and that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Love it.
I think one more thing to add too is I think one really important factor in us getting through that week is the people you hunt with, right? If you have someone who's not positive and is kind of a Debbie Downer, and that creeps into your own mind. And so having 3 very positive people hunting together helped get us through all those trials and tribulations. So your hunting partner matters, and I guess your camera guy matters too sometimes.
Definitely.
It
So
definitely does. Well, and Chris midweek too was so positive and everything. So like that was like this midweek kind of jolt that really kind of shoved us through too, which was super fun. You got some amazing content, some great photos, some great video. We'll see if we can make a film out of it. And like I think it was a blast, and we spent a week hunting hard. And the cool thing is, like that last night I was so cold, there was like a moment where I went, ooh, I don't know if I want to go work on an animal next couple hours out here.
yeah, I felt the same way.
So the bonus was like we came back, no game bags to wash, no vacuum sealer to fire up, like didn't have to clean out the grinder.
And I think Chris actually just a few weeks ago sent us more pictures that elk is still up there.
Oh, nice.
You texted me that video he sent you.
In January.
Yeah.
He's still there.
Just living his best life.
Kidding. You know what's funny is that wasn't our last hunt, because what happened is we came home and we ended up thinking we end up cooking for like our daughter's wedding this year. Brenda cooked for 150. We cook for employees. We have a lot of people over. So we tend to go through a lot of game meat, and we butcher all our own stuff. And so Brenda finally goes, Adam, I don't know, like, we kind of just didn't tag as much here. And we tagged international last year, Africa, New Zealand, but you're not bringing a lot of meat home, so we had some good hunts, but we just had below average season for us. And I shot an elk with Remy, and don't get me wrong, and we shot mule deer and antelope. We shot plenty of things. But she's like, yeah, I just think maybe we'll get a couple whitetail doe tags last minute. And I'm like, oh my gosh, probably has 2 more animals? Like, are you kidding? It was just after that season. But so we have some property. It was just going to be a ranch situation. So it's like literally one night we're on the way home from work, and she goes, maybe we'll just go shoot a couple whitetail does tonight. I'm like, really? And so long story short, like right at that last light thing, she shoots a deer, and I'm like, okay, cool, we'll go get that doe. And then on the way to her deer, a doe pops out, and we're going to recover it ranch style. And so we got out and shot it and had 2 dead whitetail, and then it was dark, and it was after work, and I'm like, oh yeah, what are we gonna do now? So we butchered up, we quartered up 2 doe that night. That was actually our last time, and it was just like, it was funny because like we didn't even have time to hardly talk after work. It was just like a super busy day at work, and then we found ourselves like bending over in a field like end of November. Just we tend to do everything kind of gutless method and did all that, and we're just out there kind of joking and laughing with headlamps and freezing cold fingers after work one day because we didn't even fully change. No. So like we're getting our work clothes bloody and stuff, but that's living in Wyoming, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
So that was actually our last time. I think maybe 2. We kind of just felt like we needed to end on something else.
Yeah.
So.
I think the biggest takeaway for me on this is the hard times make the good times better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good motto.
Yeah.
That's right. So here's to a 25. May it be filled with failures, successes, and everything in between.
I like it.
I like it. Let's do it. That was a good one, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.